The first time I felt the sky go quiet, I did not understand what I was watching. I was up there, looking down, and for a single beat, the whole planet stopped pretending to hold still. You think Earth is steady. You think the ground under your feet is the one thing in the universe that is not moving. It is not. Right now, where you are sitting, you are being flung sideways through space at roughly the speed of a rifle bullet. You do not feel it. You have never felt it. Your body has never known anything else. Now imagine, for 1 second, it stops. That is what I want to talk to you about tonight. Not a slow wind down over centuries, not a gentle braking. 1 second, Earth spinning. Then Earth not spinning. Then Earth spinning again. A hiccup in the rotation of a world. The people who study this have run the math, and the math is not kind. Stay with me here, because the second itself is where almost everyone dies. Let me set the stage. The Earth turns once on its axis every 24 hours. That sounds slow until you do the geometry. At the equator, the surface of the planet is moving at about 1,040 miles per hour. Closer to the poles, it is slower. In the middle latitudes, where most of us live, you are still being carried east at roughly the speed of a commercial jet at cruising altitude. Your house is doing this. Your bed is doing this. The cup of water on your nightstand is doing this. Everything around you agrees on the speed, so nothing slides, nothing tips. The motion is invisible because it is universal. Universal motion is a kind of grace. You only notice gravity when you fall. You only notice rotation when it stops. Second zero. The Earth's crust halts. The atmosphere does not. That is the sentence the physicists I trust keep coming back to. The ground stops. The air keeps going. There is no friction strong enough in 1 second to convince a sky full of nitrogen and oxygen that it should suddenly hold still. So the air keeps moving east at 1,000 miles per hour while the continents underneath it freeze. What that feels like on the ground is a wall. Not a wind, a wall. Anything not bolted into bedrock at the equator is gone in the first instant. Trees, cars, buildings, people. The wind speed at the equator in that first heartbeat is roughly 3 times faster than the strongest tornado ever recorded on Earth. It is faster than any hurricane. It is faster than the shock wave from most conventional explosions. It is moving across an entire hemisphere at once. I have looked at this one a few times now. It does not get easier. The friction of that air dragging itself across the surface generates heat, enormous heat. Whole regions catch fire from the wind alone before the wind has time to knock them down. Forests do not burn. They flash. The atmosphere itself, in some models, glows red along the leading edge. And that is just the air. The oceans do the same thing. Water also does not want to stop. The Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, every one of them keeps sliding east at 1,000 miles per hour while the seabed underneath them stops cold. The result is a wave that has no good name in any human language. Coastal cities on east-facing shores are not hit by a tsunami. They are scoured down to bedrock. Entire mountain ranges, the Andes, the Rockies, act as the only thing standing between an inland continent and an ocean traveling at the speed of sound. Some of those mountains hold. Most do not. I want you to picture a single specific thing for me. Not the whole planet. One coffee cup on a kitchen counter, somewhere in the middle of a continent far from any sea. The cup is full. The owner of the cup is at the sink. They have not heard anything yet because sound has not had time to travel. In that kitchen, for a fraction of a heartbeat, the cup keeps moving east at 600 miles per hour, while the counter underneath it does not. The cup, the water inside it, the toaster, the refrigerator, the person at the sink, the walls of the house, the soil under the foundation down to about 10 feet. all of it keeps going. The bedrock does not. Everything not anchored to the deep crust becomes, briefly, a projectile. The kitchen does not fall apart. The kitchen launches. I had to read that one twice before I believed it. Now the second is over. The Earth resumes spinning at its normal speed. The crust catches itself. The damage, though, has already been done, and the damage is global. Minute 1. The atmosphere is in chaos. The winds that were unleashed at the equator do not vanish. They circulate. They collide. The temperature differences between the heated leading edges and the colder trailing air spawn storm systems on a scale we have no precedent for. Lightning everywhere. Pressure differentials that pop ears, then eardrums, then lungs, depending on where you are standing. Minute 8. The first satellite images would arrive, if anyone were left to receive them. From orbit, where I have been, the planet would look wrong in a way that takes a moment to place. The cloud patterns are smeared, not swirled, smeared. Long parallel streaks running east across every latitude, as if a child dragged a wet thumb across a painting that had not finished drying. Hour 1. Fires. Everywhere there was forest, fuel, fabric, wood. The friction heat from the atmosphere has set most of the world's vegetation alight. The smoke from those fires begins to climb into a sky that is no longer behaving the way a sky should. Day 1. The first survivors began to realize what survived. It is not the cities. The cities, on east-facing coasts especially, are paste. It is not the forests. The forests are ash. What survives is what was deep, what was sheltered by terrain, what was on the leeward side of a mountain range that absorbed the worst of the wind. Pockets, valleys, the cave systems. A small team of physicists at a deep underground laboratory, half a mile of granite over their heads, would walk out into a world they would not recognize. I think about those people sometimes, the ones who would step outside on day 2, what that sky would look like to them, what the silence of it would mean. Week 1. The dust. Every fire that burned in hour 1 has been pumping particulates into the upper atmosphere for days. Combined with the soil and debris kicked up by the initial event, the sky goes the color of old bruises. Sunlight reaches the ground in a weakened, filtered form. Daytime is dim. The temperature begins to drop globally, the way it drops after very large volcanic eruptions, but on a scale none of those eruptions ever approached. The crops that survived the wind do not survive the dimming. Month 1. The food problem. Most of the world's grain is grown in temperate latitudes that took the brunt of the atmospheric event. What is left has to feed a vastly reduced but still enormous human population through a season with maybe 60% of normal sunlight. The math does not work. Best current models on this kind of dimming suggest agricultural collapse in any region that lost more than half its insulation. Famine becomes the second wave of the dying. Year 1. The Earth, if you could see it from where I have seen it, looks healed in some ways and wounded in others. The atmosphere has redistributed. The oceans have settled into new shorelines, drawn miles inland from where the old maps put them. The dust has begun to fall out. Sunlight returns, paler than before. Rain comes back. Plants, the ones that made it, start again. They are very good at starting again. They have done it before. But there is something else, and this is the part I want you to hold on to. The Earth's magnetic field weakens. Our magnetic field is generated by the motion of molten iron in the planet's outer core. That motion is partly driven by the planet's rotation. A 1-second stop does not erase the field. The core has too much momentum of its own, but the people who model these things suggest the dynamo would wobble, the field would flicker. For weeks, maybe months, the radiation shield that protects every living thing on the surface from the sun would be running at reduced strength. I have been close to that radiation, with no shield between me and it, and I do not recommend it. The sun does not care that we have had a bad day. The sun keeps doing what the sun does. Its wind comes in at roughly 400 kilometers per second every second, the way it always has. Without the full magnetic field, more of that radiation reaches the surface. The auroras in that year would be the most beautiful thing anyone left alive ever saw. They would also, depending on solar weather, be a quiet, slow killer. Cancer rates climb. Crop genetics scramble. Insect populations crash, then explode in odd directions. That is the cost of 1 second. I want to slow down here for a moment because if I keep stacking damages on damages, you will start to go numb to it. And I do not want you numb. I want you here with me. Stay with me here. The thing I keep coming back to when I look at this scenario is not the destruction. It is the morning after. It is day 2, somewhere in a valley that was sheltered enough to keep its trees. The sky is the wrong color. The wind has finally settled. Birds, the ones that survived, do not know what to do because their navigation depends on a magnetic field that is not behaving. They circle. They land in places they would not normally land. A person standing in that valley, looking up, sees something no human in our timeline has ever seen. A daytime sky with auroras in it. Pink and green ribbons hanging over a noon sun. That person is alive. The world ended, and that person is alive. I think about that a lot, because here is the thing the disaster math does not capture. Life on this planet has gotten through worse. Not faster, not in a single second, but worse in total damage. Asteroids the size of cities, volcanic events that filled the sky with poison for tens of thousands of years, ice ages that buried entire continents. Every single time, something walked out of the wreckage. Something always walks out. Sometimes it is a different something than walked in, but the planet has never been fully sterilized, not once, in 4.5 billion years of trying. I find that comforting. I do not know if I am supposed to, but I do. The team that figured out a lot of this scenario, they are not running it because they think it is going to happen. They are running it because understanding it teaches us about the planet we have. Every catastrophe you can model is a love letter to the things that are currently keeping you alive. The rotation, the atmosphere holding still relative to the ground, the molten iron sloshing around in the dark under your feet, generating an invisible shield against an invisible ocean of radiation. None of these things had to be the way they are. We just got very, very lucky on a planet that figured out a stable configuration and held it long enough for something like us to show up and notice. You are sitting somewhere on Earth right now, probably on a couch. The ground is moving sideways at hundreds of miles an hour, and you cannot tell. The air is moving with it. The water in your body is moving with it. The cup on the table next to you is moving with it. Everything in your life is in perfect, silent agreement about which direction is east and how fast east is going. That agreement is the reason you are alive. That is, I think, what I wanted to tell you. Now let me bring you back down, because I owe you the honest part. This will not happen. Not the way I described it. There is no known mechanism by which the Earth's crust could stop rotating in 1 second. Even a direct strike from a very large asteroid would slow the rotation by a tiny fraction over a much longer time. The planet has angular momentum on a scale that is genuinely difficult to express in normal numbers. Stopping it instantly would require energies that, as far as we currently understand physics, simply do not exist as a deliverable event. What can happen, and what is happening, is much smaller and much slower. The Earth's rotation is gradually decelerating because of tidal interaction with the Moon. Each century, the day gets longer by about 2 milliseconds. 2 milliseconds. In 100 years. That is the real number. That is what the physics actually does. so you do not need to be afraid of this scenario the way you are afraid of, say, the weather. It is a thought experiment, a way of asking what the rotation is doing for us by removing it for a heartbeat and watching what falls apart. And what falls apart is, more or less, everything. But there is a smaller version of this question that is real and worth sitting with for a moment. The Earth does have brief, tiny variations in its rotation, fractions of a second measured by atomic clocks. Sometimes the day gets shorter for a while, sometimes it gets longer. Earthquakes can shift the moment of inertia of the planet by amounts you and I cannot feel, but the clocks can. The rotation of your home is, in fact, slightly unsteady, just on a scale that is so small your body will never know. I find that a useful thing to know. It does not change anything. It just reminds me that even the things I take for granted are negotiating with the universe in ways I cannot perceive. So, we have walked through the second. We have walked through the year. We have walked through the part where I tell you the people in the valley with the wrong-colored sky are still alive. And the part where I tell you not to lose sleep over any of it, because the planet is not actually going to do this. What is left is you, sitting where you are sitting, with a planet under you that has been quietly, perfectly spinning for longer than there have been eyes to see it spin. Tonight, when you go to bed, the ground is going to carry you east at the speed of a jet. You will not feel it. You will sleep through it. You will wake up in roughly the same spot relative to the sun, because the planet brought you back around to it, the way it always does. That is not a small thing. It is the largest small thing in your life. If you want to sit with me through another one of these, the next one I've been working on is about what happens to a star in the moments before it dies, and what we would see in our sky if the closest one to us decided tonight was the night. I will see you there. Take care of yourself. The ground is doing its job. You can rest.